This week on our chronological study, I really want to back up and look at the Book of Ruth. And so to kind of take a look at this book, who wrote the Book of Ruth? Well, the author never names himself in this. Jewish history has always held that it was Samuel that wrote it. He just never names himself. I think Samuel's probably a good fit in this. The setting of the Book of Ruth happens sometime in the Book of Judges in that time period. If you remember, that span covers about a 350-year period with the Judges. Well, the story of Ruth and this story here happens somewhere in that time frame, in the Book of the Judges. All right, and so, but Samuel, of course, comes at the end of Judges and the beginning of the Kings period. But he makes a good fit for who wrote it, because whoever wrote it wasn't writing it at the time that these events happened. Because when we get to the very last of it, it's going to name off the lineage all the way to David, okay, who will be king. So it had to be somebody late enough that knew David was even existed to be able to write the book. So they're writing this well down the road in time. And I do probably believe it probably is Samuel. Now, I want to kind of touch on one of the themes, and the reason why I like this book and wanted to go back to it, one of the main themes I think you get out of this is a noble character, okay? Not a character meaning a person, but noble character, somebody's character. And it uses the word in our version several times through this, somebody of noble character. Okay, so I want to start right there, and let's kind of pick that little thought process apart for just a minute, because it's going to flow through this whole book. Somebody of noble character. I actually looked and just kind of took a little piece off of the book of Proverbs when it talks about somebody of noble character. They're more valuable than expensive jewels or precious jewels. Somebody of noble character, and in context of that was actually Proverbs 31 was where that came from, and it's talking about a wife of noble character is more valuable than even precious jewels. Okay? So someone that's considered of noble character, someone with high morals and ideals, someone that's faithful. Okay? They've got a greatness of character about them. It's someone that's honest and charitable. Okay? Someone that's smart, not necessarily genius level, but smart. Okay? But because of that, they also make wise decisions. Okay? Whether it's from experience or knowledge, but they take the experience and the knowledge and they make wise decisions from that. Okay? Somebody of noble character. They're trusted by others. Other people look and they trust somebody, and you know people that you just, you know what, I don't ever worry about them. That's because there's something about them that you trust. That's a trait of somebody with noble character. They also make others around them look good. Okay? In the context of this, family look good. Okay? You've all probably been around somebody. You ever been around somebody who just, they act a fool? And you feel just because they're there, it embarrasses you? Or you know they embarrassed the ministry? Or they, maybe you've been the one you embarrassed your mama sometime a long time ago. Whatever it was. They're the type person that they make others look good around them, not embarrassing them. That's a person of noble character. Okay? They speak with a controlled tongue. They don't start or end their harsh words by, well, I'm just saying. Or, well, you know what, I'm just going to tell you the truth. Okay? That ain't how they operate. That's not who they are. Okay? They control their speech and what they're doing. And then bottom line, from at least a biblical perspective, it's someone who fears the Lord and walks with the Lord. Okay? Again, a lot of these things, not only are these definitions a secular definition, but they're also right out of Proverbs 31 and what God calls a noble character of a noble woman. Okay? Now, With that said, let's jump into the book of Ruth, okay? And we will take and remember the whole idea of the noble person throughout this thing as we look at it. Chapter 1, verse 1. During the time of the judges, that's our setting, right? There was famine in the land. Well, let me ask you something. If there's famine in the land of Israel, that means that by default there's got to be a problem, right? Because God said, if you follow my commands, you don't get tied up in all the other stuff that those people that you're getting out of there do. If you follow my commands, you walk with me, you don't get into all that idolatry. He says, I'm going to make you productive, prosperous, everything's going to go good. But if you don't, my hand's going to be against you. So for them to have famine means what? Well, you need crops to survive on and the water's dried up. God's brought a level at least of judgment on the land because of, well, activity going on in the land. Okay, so there's your setting. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to stay in the territory of Moab for a while. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. The names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. All right, so by default, when you see it and it says they are I can't even pronounce that, Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They are from the tribe of Judah, okay? There's your 12 tribes. They're from the tribe of Judah, and their inherited land that God gave them, including this family, is in the Bethlehem area. Play a big part in the future too, won't it? Okay? So, Elimelech is his name. He's got a wife, he's got 2 sons, and they are what? They're from the tribe of Judah, from the land of Bethlehem. They entered the fields of Moab and they settled there. There's a problem. They're in their inherited land. God called them out of slavery. He brings them in, gives them this promised land, gives them their inherited land. And the first time when they end up in problems, what do? They left town. They weren't supposed to leave. What did God say? This is your land. If you walk away from me, repent. They didn't say flee the land. Now, where are you at? You're in Judges. You're in the period of the Judges. And what does it say about them? Every man does what was right in his own eyes. That don't necessarily mean everybody's staying around raping, killing, and all this other stuff. It's just whatever you think is right. In this case, you've got a famine. And look, you can understand if you're a guy and you got wife and kids and you need to feed them, what does he come up with a plan? You know what? Let's go to Moab, or we can get some food and raise our family over there. Problem is, God didn't tell him to do that. He's supposed to be in the land that God gave him, and in particular, he's got a plot of land that's got his name written on it that God gave him. He's not supposed to leave that land. Now, he doesn't just leave there, but where does he go? He goes to a foreign land. He goes to Moab. Now, where's Moab? Well, Moab's not in, the nation Moab is not in the promised land. So it's not in one of those areas that the people were told when you go in to wipe them out and wipe all that out and get rid of it. No, they're actually off to the east. Where does Moab come from? Well, they come from Lot. Remember Abraham's nephew Lot? Remember what happened at Sodom? God destroyed all that. Remember Lot and his wife and daughters left out of town right before God destroyed it. What happened to Lot's wife? She turned around and looked, right? And what? She turned into a pillar of salt. If you remember, right after that, the 2 daughters, they get daddy drunk. And they, well, you know what happens. And from that, one of the girls has a son named Moab. That's who these people come from. And God told the Israelites before they went in to take the promised land, don't mess with the Moabites. Leave them alone. Okay? So they weren't going into, as far as a promised land group, they were leaving the promised land entirely, and they were going into, while they are distant relatives, they're not fans of the Israelites. They're also extreme idol worshipers, just like those people groups that were in the land. And their main idol would be similar to the Baals, was called Chemosh. Okay? So that's where they've taken this man who's now leading his family. And where does he lead his family? Away from where they're supposed to be, and he takes his wife and kids off into a foreign land that they shouldn't have been in. Okay? They enter the land of Moab, the fields of Moab, and they settle there. Verse 3, Naomi's husband Elimelech dies, and she's left with her 2 sons. Her 2 sons took Moabite women as their wives. One was named Orpah, and the second one named Ruth. New problem, right? Daddy's died over here. We got a problem. I got 2 sons. And what do the 2 sons do? They marry foreign women. Okay? Now, in this case, where they're at, the bigger issue is they're not supposed to be intermarrying with women who worship foreign gods. Okay? And they've done what? They've now done that. They enter a land where there are foreign gods. They're not supposed to be taking wives of the foreign gods. They're worshiping foreign gods. And the Moabite women were worshiping foreign gods. So here they are. They're in a land that they shouldn't be in. They've now intermarried into where they shouldn't be. And it had nothing to do with race. It had to do with being unequally yoked. Okay? But they're over there in this land, and they've done this. Now again, they have... Who led them astray? The man of the house. And he's got them over there. Now the sons have done what? They've gone astray too. Here's the thing. This is still, while God's not... They're in a rebellious time from God in the whole section of what they're doing here. God's got a plan that looks above all this. Okay? God takes and uses even the things He knows that somebody's going to do, and He can still use it for their good, but more importantly, for His glory. In this case, God's using this as a part of His redemptive plan of history is taking place based on what is going on here. Now, after they lived in Moab about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died. Naomi's left without her 2 children and without her husband. You're in a foreign land. You're a woman with 2 daughter-in-laws, no men. You got a problem. A big problem. Okay? She and her daughter-in-law set out to return from the territory of Moab because she had heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to His people's needs by providing them food. She's in a foreign land she ain't supposed to be in, but she's now heard that what? Well, that must mean if they don't have famine over there anymore, they've had what? Rain and crops are growing and there's food back in the land. Which the only way that could have happened would have been what? There had been a repentance in the land. And she's over in a place she hadn't, what shouldn't be, but she's now heard that, hey, God's moving over here. Okay? Y'all ever been there? You ever been in a land you ain't supposed to be in? And all of a sudden you kind of, you know what? Over there, back over there, God's working. She's over there a place and she's hearing what? God's working back at home. Okay? So she's going to take off and head back that direction. Verse 7, she left the place where she had been living, accompanied by her 2 daughters-in-law, traveled along the road leading back to the land of Judah. She's actually in a pretty dangerous spot if you think about it. I mean, honestly, do you expect to see some women walking up down the street in the middle of the night and somewhere here in Memphis? It's not a safe spot, would it be? Can you imagine there? You don't have cameras, phones, you ain't calling anybody for help. You got women walking the roads coming back. It's a dangerous place to be. Naomi said to each of them, each of you go back to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness to you as you have shown to the dead and to me. You've shown kindness not only to me, but to what? Your husbands and my husband. May the Lord grant each of you rest in the house of a new husband. She kissed them and they wept loudly. She's basically saying what? You're released from your what? Your marital duties. Your husbands are no longer alive. You don't have to stay with me. Why don't y'all go on back and get you some more husbands? Okay? But they insisted on returning with her to your people. Verse 11, but Naomi replied, return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. Go on, for I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and to bear sons, would you be willing to wait for them to grow up? Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? No, my daughters, my life is much too bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hand has turned against me. Now, let's be honest. She's really having a moment of depression, isn't she? She's looking at this and she's seeing them and she's saying what? One thing she recognizes is that God's involved in this. Y'all ever been there where you walked off on something and you know you ain't supposed to be over there and God kind of gets you and takes you to the woodshed a little bit? What's He trying to do? Get you back in line, get you headed in the right direction. I think she's realized this. You know what? We ain't supposed to be over here. We've heard about it and we're headed back home. But you know, girls, God's hand's against me. Oh, woe is me. Now, she is being realistic, though. You know what, girls? If I had a man tonight, by the time that kid grows up, that I get me pregnant, and by the time that kid grows up, you ain't going to be waiting around for that. So why don't y'all go on back? Because guess what? They need husbands as part of their just survival in that day. Okay, so she is being a realist in this, but I do think she's having a little bout of depression that she's got going. Verse 14 again, they wept loudly, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Naomi said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. And guess what? She disappears off into the history, and we don't ever know about her again. But she's done what? She's decided, you know what? We're still in the land of Moab right now. It's a lot easier to turn around and go back home. But not just going home, but going back to what? Her gods, plural. Okay? Her gods. Follow your sister-in-law. But look at Ruth's reply. Don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. And your people will be my people. And your God will be my God, singular. Not plural, singular. The other girl, she went back to her gods. She says, no, I'm staying with you, and your God will be my God. Sounds like a profession of faith, doesn't it? Okay. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do so severely if anything but death separates you and me. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped talking to her, meaning that she stopped arguing with her about it. Here's a woman that's made up her mind. Y'all been around a woman that's ever made up her mind? Okay? You got a woman that's made up her mind, and she now realizes, you know what? She's staying with me. There's nothing I can do about it. Now, one of the things that you'll notice about her here is as she's doing this, the one girl takes off and leaves her. But she stays. She not only is making a statement to stay with God, she's also making a statement to stay with her mother-in-law. She's basically saying what? You're my family. How did she get there? She married into it. Part of what she's doing here is she's faithful from the aspect of she made a commitment to her husband. He may be dead, but she's still got a commitment to who? His family. I'll tell you this. You know what this reminded me of when I was thinking and reading through this and thinking about this? My mom and dad were married 35 years when my dad died. Okay, About 7 years later, my mom remarried. Well, my grandmother, my dad's mom, she had Alzheimer's, and she didn't know the world existed for about 15 years. My dad kind of helped take care of her when he was alive after he died. Guess what my mom did? Even after she got remarried, till the day my grandmother died, she still took care of my grandmother just like my dad had done. She was honoring her husband by taking care of his family. Ruth is faithful not just to her husband while he was alive, but even to her family. She's being faithful. That actually takes a person of character and integrity. Okay? So she's also doing this at this point, and I'm going back with you with the fact that at this point she doesn't think there's any advantage to this. Matter of fact, if she was working off of personal advantage, staying in Moab where her family was would have been the easier option. She's going to go back to a land that she knows nobody there, not thinking that anything other than we are dirt poor and we have nothing, and she's still going to go back with her. Okay? Takes character to do that, but I think also she's not wanting to leave her husband's mother left alone to face all this by herself. So she's being an honorable person, even in how she's taking care of her mother-in-law and staying with her. Now, they arrive in Bethlehem, verse 19. The two of them traveled until they came to Bethlehem. When they entered Bethlehem, the whole town was excited about their arrival, and the local women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" She's been gone probably about 20 years. Hey, any of y'all look the same today as you did 20 years ago? I saw a picture just came up on my Facebook today. I was like, holy cow, this is only about 15 years ago. Don't look like the same person, right? And then she says, they said, "Can this be Naomi?" Verse 20, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara." She answered, "For the Almighty has made me very bitter." Where does that come from? If y'all remember when God led the Israelites out of Egypt, they got thirsty and they stopped, and there was a place where the water was bitter and they couldn't drink it. And what'd they name it? Mara. Okay? So that's what she's basically saying. I've come back from a foreign land, but you know what? I'm bitter. Okay? Chapter 2, we get introduced here to the man of the story, and that's Boaz in this chapter. Look at chapter 2, verse 1. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side. He was a prominent man of, there's our name, our word, noble character. From Elimelech's family, his name was Boaz. Well, what we know about Boaz is a few things. One, he's in Elimelech's family, which means he's also from the tribe of Judah, and he has property there in Bethlehem. We also know that Boaz comes from his mama and his daddy, Solomon, and that girl that was the prostitute from Jericho, Rahab. That's their son, Boaz. Okay? And it also says there that he's a prominent man of noble character. Okay? So here's a guy who lives, y'all remember we talked about some of the traits of a noble person at the beginning, right? Here's a man with that. He's also a prominent man. Okay? He's got position, he's got power, he's got authority, he's got wealth, and he's a noble man of character. And he's living there in this land, and he's Elimelech's. I'll make the argument in a minute. I think he could be Elimelech's brother. Okay? We'll get there. I'll make that argument in a minute. The Bible doesn't tell us for certain, but I think there's enough to at least it's possible. Verse 2, Ruth the Moabitess asked Naomi, "Will you let me go into the fields and gather fallen grain behind someone with whom I find favor?" Naomi answered her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So Ruth left and entered the field to gather grain behind the harvesters. She happened to be in the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of Elimelech's family. Now, first of all, My guess is as they made that trek across from Moab back to the land, Ruth knows when she gets, Naomi knows when she gets there that they're poor. And she probably's told her about this thing that's in the law of Moses that God had told him to put in about called gleaning. And so what was supposed to happen? If you owned a field, when they harvested the field, you were supposed to leave the outside edges alone. And as you harvested the grain, anything that fell on the ground, you weren't supposed to go back and pick up. You were supposed to leave that for the poor people to come and get so that they had something to eat. That's the law of God in how He told them how to operate in their land as part of their nation. So what has happened? Here's Ruth and they get to the land, they get back, and they're poor, right? And she says, hey, is it okay if I go out and do that gleaning thing you talked about? And her mother-in-law says, sure. Now, what does this tell you about Ruth? I think this is another character trait of hers. She didn't go sit over there on the couch somewhere and kick back her feet and whine and cry and complain because she ain't got nothing to eat. What'd she do? She went to work. She got up and did something. Okay? It takes character to sit there when you don't feel like it to get up and go do something. And in this case, she's going to do it while Mara, who's bitter over here, isn't. And she's going to go out to do it for what purpose? Not just to feed herself, but to feed Naomi also. So she gets up and she just goes to work. She gets up and does something to help out the situation. Okay? And she ends up in the field that's owned by Boaz. Now look, it's complete chance in her opinion. But the thing was, God's the one that's directing it. Okay? She could have ended up in any field out there, and she ends up in Boaz's. Verse 4, later when Boaz arrived from Bethlehem, he said to the harvesters, the Lord be with you. And they said, the Lord bless you. What do you got here? You got a man of noble character that's also walking with the Lord. I can tell you a few reasons why I know he's walking with the Lord. A, he's given a greeting. But I'd also sit there and say he's also somebody that knows the law of God and he's following it. How do I know that? Because he's letting people glean in his field. Okay? He's letting people glean in his field. He's also a man of prominence. He's a man of wealth. He's a property owner. Okay? Verse 5, Boaz asked his servant who was in charge of the harvesters, whose young woman is this? Now, most commentators believe Boaz might have been as much as about 80 years old at this point. And I don't think he's looking over there going, hey, who's this young thing? Okay? I think he's probably looking over there. He sees another girl. And as we go through this, I think you'll see why. He sees a girl over there, and that's not usual to see a girl that's just out there by herself from nowhere. Okay? But the question he asks is, whose woman is this? Meaning, does she have a husband? Which guy is her husband? Okay? Because for women, that was a protection for them. Okay? So, here's what the servant says in verse 6. The servant answered, she is the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the territory of Moab. Now, he knows Naomi. She's in the family. He knows. He knows who Naomi is. She asked me, here's what the servant says. She asked me, will you let me gather fallen grain among the bundles behind the harvesters? She came and has been on her feet since early morning, except she rested a little bit in the shelter. The guy that's over all the rest of the people that are out there harvesting, and what does he notice? She not only came to ask if it's okay, but she's been working her butt off. Look, for somebody who's got integrity And somebody, in the case of the guy that's in charge, what does he notice? I've got somebody out here that's working her butt off. Okay? And reports that to who? His boss, Boaz, that, you know what? She came with Naomi. She's here with her. And she's out here and she is working her butt off. She ain't playing around. Okay? It's actually given what? A good report. If you can be a foreigner coming in and you can already impress the first person that's basically letting you come out there on your field, you're getting somewhere. And what does he do? He's so impressed by her that he's reporting what? He didn't just say, you know, that's just, she's here with Naomi. She's working her butt off. Okay? Verse 8, then Boaz said to Ruth, listen, my daughter. I think this is exactly what this is. I think he looks and he knows that she's with Naomi, his family member. He knows where she's from. And he looks and he's got that fatherly kind of protective instincts come out. Okay? Because watch what he does. Listen, my daughter, don't go and gather grain in another field. And don't leave this one, but stay here close to my female servants. See which field they are harvesting and follow them. Haven't I ordered the young men, do not touch you? When you are thirsty, go and drink from the jars the young men have filled. He's issuing an order to all them folks around there, don't mess with her. Because in that day, you're a girl out there, there's a good chance some dude could decide, you know what, you're going home with me, or could just rape her. But he's got enough position, power, and prominence to be able to tell them, don't touch her. Leave her alone. Not because he's looking at her going, she's going to be mine, because she's there helping his own family member. Look, any of y'all, if y'all have somebody y'all know about that helped a family member of yours, do you kind of hold a special place for them? Somebody helps your mama, you kind of help a little special place for that person. Well, here's a guy who's looking going, you're helping my family members, and I'm going to make sure nobody touches you. You're going to be safe as long as you stay in my fields with my people, because I've made an order for them not to harm you. Verse 10, she fell down, bowed to the ground, and said to them, why have I found favor with you so that you notice me, although I am a foreigner? She knew she was in a position that wasn't normal. Boaz answered her, everything you have done for your mother-in-law since your husband's death has been fully reported to me. This goes back to family. Everything you've done for my family member, your mother-in-law, has been reported to me. He's heard. Look, they got back into the land. It's not like it's a big town. It's Bethlehem. Look, any of y'all ever done something and everybody in town knows what you've done, or at least you feel like everybody in town knows what you've done? Well, the report's not been bad for her. The report's been what? Really good on her. How you left your father and mother in your native land? Seems like that comes up in Genesis there when God put husband and wife together, leave your father and mother and join with your husband. And so what was he telling him? You've left your father and your mother, your native land, and how you came to a people you did not previously know. May the Lord reward you for what you've done, and may you receive a full reward from the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. See, God had also in His law, He had a plan set up for people that were coming in wanting to be seeking refuge and be there in the land. Okay? So she's found favor, and I think, again, this is based on the fact that it's family. It's family, and He's going to protect her. And in protecting her, He protects who? Naomi. Now, again, she's got a level of integrity just because she's what? She's got out there and got to work. But not just what he's seeing in the field that day, but I've heard what you've done for all this time. Okay? He's seeing it. Now, verse 15. When she got up to gather grain, Boaz ordered his young man, let her even gather grain among the bundles, and don't humiliate her. Don't humiliate her. Look, she's not just there because she's poor. He's not taking care of her just because she's poor. He's taking care of her because she's family. See, what they were supposed to do was just let them go and get the stuff that fell off the ground. But he's saying, hey, you know what? You got some bundles over here, and she goes and gets some of that. Let her have it, and don't humiliate her. Look, she's a foreigner. She don't know all the rules yet. But don't humiliate her. Okay? He's protecting her because she's now one of the family. Okay? So it's not that she's just poor, she's family. Then look at verse 19. She gets back, her mother-in-law said to her, where did you gather barley today, and where did you work? May the Lord bless the man who noticed you. Ruth told her mother-in-law whom she had worked with and said, the name of the man I worked with today is Boaz. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, may the Lord bless him because he has not abandoned his kindness to the living or the dead. He hadn't just us, but his kindness is to who? His relative that's dead. He hasn't forgotten us. Because look, what she took home that day was way, way, way more than normally would have happened. And Naomi knew it. You ain't gleaning a field and coming home with this much stuff. This is a guy who's taking care of us because he's family. And he hasn't forgotten family. Again, he's living under the law of Moses. He's living following the Lord. Why? Because God had told him to do that. That was part of this whole thing. He will be a redeemer. Okay? He's living under that. Naomi said, the man is a close relative. He is one of our family redeemers. Ruth the Moabitess said, he also told me, stay with my young men until they have finished all my harvest. So Naomi said to her daughter-in-law Ruth, my daughter, it is good for you to work with his female servants so that nothing will happen to you in another field. Again, there's a protection here. It's good for you to be there. Stay with him. He can protect you if you're there, but if you go outside of where you're supposed to be, okay? Now, chapter 3, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to talk about all of the details of this and the whole thing that goes on here, but Ruth comes up with a plan, okay? Naomi comes up with a plan for Ruth, all right? Let's just pick up at verse 8. At midnight, Boaz was startled. He turned over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. So he asked, who are you? Can you imagine being asleep, and all of a sudden you wake up and there's somebody at your feet? That was what happened to him. And she says, I am Ruth, your servant. She replied, take me under your wing, for you are a family redeemer. Naomi knew he was a close relative and he could fit the redeemer category. Okay? Naomi knew all this, and Naomi has gone, you know what? Here's a family member, somebody who is capable of being a redeemer. Okay? And again, God had put all this in place in the law. So when she goes, this isn't hey, here's a rich guy we can get out of our problems. She's going because here is a family redeemer that God has said for that to be that way and to be there. And so what are they doing? They're operating under God's law and God's direction for people in the land, for the Israelites. She's just operating under the law of God. Okay? So she's asking him as a family redeemer to help them. Verse 10, he said, may the Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before. Why? Well, one thing is she's there because she knows that this is going to give her a husband. But this ain't about just her. She's coming to this guy Because this is also about Naomi. Okay? Because you have not pursued younger men, whether rich or poor. He's looking and he's going, look, she ain't out there in the field with all the other girls. Hey, y'all, check out the guys over there. They're watching us. She ain't paying no attention to all that. She ain't over there going, hey, that one's rich and we need a rich man. She ain't over there going, hey, let's see if we can get his attention. Ain't none of that stuff going on. Okay? You didn't do all that. That's what he says right here. He says, you have not pursued younger men, whether rich or poor. You ain't got caught up in all that. What's she been doing? She's had her head down and she's been working, hadn't she? And she's been doing it what? For her and Naomi. She ain't been into all that other mess. Okay? And because of that, he says, verse 11, and don't be afraid, my daughter. I will do for you whatever you say, since all the people in my town know that you are a woman of what? Noble character. Now you see why I wanted to get that out at the beginning? He knows that she's an honorable woman. She's a noble woman. But not just him. Everybody in town knows it. Look, can you imagine how hard it would have been as a foreigner to go into a new town, new area, and people are going to pick you apart anyway, right? Try to figure out where they're going to fail, and they hadn't been able to do that. And they've been so impressed with her that he says that even the people in my town know you're a noble woman. I'd make the argument that if she had not, and she had been one that was kind of flipping around and chasing after the boys, he would have never done this. Because somebody of noble character generally won't go get involved with somebody that's not of noble character. It makes a mess. Okay? And he's looking at it, and he's following God. Now, if you remember, one of the things that came up with that about the noble character was about following God. Let me see, where are my notes on it? Someone who fears the Lord, having noble character, God honors that. And He honors that by what? Giving him an honorable, noble woman. Proverbs 31. I would make the argument that the book of Ruth, or Ruth in general here, is probably the best biblical example anywhere in Scripture of what a Proverbs 31 woman is. Acted out. She was faithful to her husband. She was faithful to his family. She changed over and her gods to the one true God of Israel. She's now when they're poor, and she's out there doing what? She's working hard. Seems like that's in Proverbs 31 too, isn't it? About the woman. She's a hard worker. She's handling her business. She ain't out there chasing around men. She ain't doing all this other stuff. What's she doing? She's just keeping her head down and she's working. And she's doing this. And so what's God doing? God's taking and honoring a noble man by giving him a noble woman. And He recognized that not just from what he's just seen, but also what everybody in town's seen. Okay? So, verse 12, back to him. Yes, it is true that I am a family redeemer, but there is a redeemer closer than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, that's good. Let him redeem you. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, as the Lord lives, I will. Now lie down till morning. That's a risky proposition. Again, here's a guy of integrity. Here's a guy of noble character. Why? While he is a family redeemer, he knows there's one that's closer to it that, based on the law of God, should have first right of refusal. Now, how hard would that be, guys, for you if you had a woman that was offering all this to you to go, you know what, there's somebody closer to it, based on what God says, he's got the first right. And if he decides to, you'll be going with him, not with me. That'd be a hard spot to be in. But you've got a man that's walking with the Lord, that's following the law of God, and what does he do? No matter the opportunity that he might lose the opportunity to have him a young wife, he might lose it. But it doesn't matter. He's going to follow God and God's way instead of personal desire. Okay? Man of integrity. Now she lays down at his feet until morning. And he got up while it was still dark. Boaz said, don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. There's nothing hanky-panky that happened that night. You got two noble, honorable people. But what he didn't want to do is he didn't want to have the appearance of evil. So he sends her back. Oh, and by the way, what does he do? He sends her with a whole lot of barley to go back. Verse 16, she went to her mother-in-law Naomi, who asked her, what happened, my daughter? Then Ruth told her everything the man had done for her. She said, he gave me these 6 measures of barley because he said, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Told everything, and then he gave all this. What's he still doing? He sent back enough to take care of his family. Okay? He didn't just send her on back. He sent back enough to take care of his family. Again, this ain't a poor person he's taking care of. This is family he's taking care of. And guess what? He's doing it only because the law of God's told him he's to take care of his family. Okay? And then verse 18, Naomi said, my daughter, wait until you find out how things go, for he won't rest unless he resolves this issue today. How did she know he would go do that? He's an honorable, noble man. He's already said, I'm going to do it. He's trustworthy. He's truthful. Okay? And so he's going to resolve this today. She didn't worry about it. You know, I wonder if he's going to go back and think, you know what, I need to rethink this a little bit. I'll get back to you next week. None of that happens. Naomi knows that this faithful man of God is going to go deal with it. Why? Because that's part of what he's supposed to do. And it's part of taking care of his family. I'm going to go to the guy who's got first right of refusal. And if he don't, I will. Okay? Now, so in chapter 4, that's exactly what's going to take place. He's going to get the guy. Chapter 4, let's just read a few verses here. Boaz, verse 1, went to the gate of the town and sat down there. Soon the family redeemer Boaz had spoken about came by. By the way, we never know his name. Had he have taken up the deal, we'd know his name. He didn't take the deal. Okay? Boaz says, come over here and sit down. So he went over and he sat down. Then Boaz took 10 men out of the town's elders and said to them, sit here. And as they sat down, he said to the Redeemer, Naomi, who has returned from the territory of Moab, is selling the portion of the field that belonged to our brother Elimelech. Okay? Now, in the Hebrew, it says our brother, but it could mean somebody that's a close relative, okay? It could mean a cousin, an uncle. I mean, it could. Whatever I do know what this does mean is there's a hierarchy, Elimelech, and there's somebody that was bloodline closer, at least in lineage, than Boaz was. So if Elimelech and Boaz are brothers, that means there's probably one brother that's in between them, okay, that would have the first right of refusal, okay? So he says, and why does Naomi need this redeemed? See, she has the land because it was her husband Elimelech's. She's not allowed to do anything with it. She can't sell it. She can't do anything. She needs a redeemer, a family member to come do that for her. So this family member has got the option to come and do it and handle that. Verse 4, I thought I should inform you. I'm sure he didn't want to, but I thought I should inform you. God's told me to do this way. Okay? Buy it back in the presence of those seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you want to redeem it, do it. But if you do not want to redeem it, tell me so that I will know, because there isn't anyone other than you to redeem it, and I'm next after you. Here's your chance, guy. Now, I think Boaz's heart dropped a level at this next statement. I want to redeem it, he answered. You got to think he probably went, ooh. But he does keep he keeps a little something back for the debate, right? Verse 5. Then Boaz said, on the day you buy the field from Naomi, you will acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the deceased man, to perpetuate the man's name on his property. Wait. Okay, you're going to redeem it? Oh, by the way, you pick up a Moabite wife, and the offspring of that will be Elimelech's, and the land will pass that way for Elimelech's family, which was set up by God. Okay. And the Redeemer replied, I can't redeem it myself, or I will ruin my own inheritance. See, he was only looking at it not from what God's law was. He was just looking at it from his own personal desire, wasn't he? Now, here's the deal. Boaz will be in the same boat. But he's willing to do what? Do it anyway. And children, based on what? And the land hereditarily being done what? Based on Elimelech, not himself. Why is he willing to do that? This is a godly man of noble character that's willing to do this. Okay? Verse 9, Boaz says to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses today that I am buying from Naomi everything that belonged to Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife to perpetuate, I had the worst time with that word, the deceased man's name on his property, so that his name will not disappear among his relatives or from the gate of his hometown. You are witnesses today. He knew what he was doing. He didn't have to do this. He's going to redeem people who need to be redeemed, and he's not getting any benefit out of it. Well, he is getting benefit, but not the same benefit. Okay? He's taking on another man's family. Okay? And he's saying what? So be it. I'll do it. He's a man of integrity. Verse 11, all the people were at the city gate, including the elders, said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is entering your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built the house of Israel. May you be powerful in Ephraim, and your name well known in Bethlehem. The other guy, we don't have a clue what his name was. And honestly, most people could care less or don't even think about the name of Elimelech. Okay? But everybody knows Boaz. If you've been in the Bible very long, you know Boaz. Okay? May your house become like the house of Perez, the son of Tamar, born to Judah, because the offspring the Lord will give you by this young woman. That's an interesting statement. Why is he making this statement? Or why are they making this statement? Perez, Tamar. Well, see, all the women that are named in the lineage of David and ultimately in the lineage of the Messiah, except for Jesus' own mother, all the women named there are all foreign women. Every one of them. Judah and Tamar. Tamar ain't of the tribe of Israel. Okay? And it was a bad situation because what was supposed to happen? That whole redemption thing, that whole brother taking care and carrying on the line in the name of your deceased brother. See, Judah had, one of his sons was married to Tamar. Well, he was so wicked that God killed him. So Judah takes his next son and gives him to her for the purpose of carrying on your brother's lineage. Well, the Bible says that he didn't want to do that. He enjoyed the aspect of having the wife, but he would spill his seed on the ground so that she wouldn't get pregnant. And that made God mad, and he killed him too. And Judah said, when my other son grows up, I'll let you have him. He didn't do that. I mean, honestly, 3 times, it's like, can you risk a third child, right? So he didn't do that. So what does she do? She takes and she tricks Judah, her father-in-law. She dresses up like a temple prostitute and sits over there when he comes through. And he ends up going in thinking it's a temple prostitute, and it was actually his own daughter-in-law. Perez comes from that. So comes from Judah and a foreign girl. Okay, and so what's he picking up? A foreign girl, a Moabite. Oh, and Boaz, who's Boaz' mama? Rahab from who? Jericho. Okay? You got these women listed here in this thing. Oh, and what's the other, just while we're there, what's the other woman that's in the lineage there that is not from the tribe of Judah? King David. Solomon and Nathan, both ways go to the Messiah. One's from Luke's version, one's from Matthew's version. I think Matthew's is from talking about Joseph, Jesus' stepfather, Joseph, through Solomon. Okay, the other one has Nathan listed. They believe that that's probably Mary's line. Okay, who was their mother? Bathsheba. Okay. All the women that are listed in the line of Christ are all foreign women. What's one of the things that's telling you? This salvation plan ain't just for the Jews. It's for the Gentiles also. And women are co-heirs with us, with Christ. Okay? And God's the one that put all this together. Now, the last couple of verses right there, verse 18. Now, these are the family records of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron, Hezron Aram, Aram fathered Amminadab, Amminadab fathered Nahshon, Nahshon fathered Salmon, Salmon fathered Boaz by who? Rahab. Boaz fathered Obed by who? Ruth. And then it doesn't tell us who's the rest of them. It says Obed fathered Jesse, and Jesse fathered David. Okay? And that's where the book ends. Now, going back to the whole idea of noble, God took a noble man that was in the line of, Judah. And this noble man was doing what? He was older by this point, and he was walking with the Lord. Here's a girl over here. She's a noble girl. She's honorable. She's got integrity. He wasn't looking for a wife when he showed up that day, and she sure wasn't looking for a husband. She just was looking to find some food to survive on. And what did God do? God put it together as the Redeemer. Okay? Boaz just walking with the Lord and looked over one day, and what did he see? Here's a noble girl. Okay? God put it together. God put it together. Okay? But Boaz is what? He's a redeemer. Boaz is a picture of Christ. Okay? Redeemer means that whoever you're redeeming, they ain't got a way to do it themselves. Boaz is a picture of Christ. Hey, look, can any of you pay your sin debt? You can't. The Redeemer came. Okay? Ruth, who's she a picture of? Us. Even when you didn't know you needed to be redeemed, guess what? God did. Okay? She's a picture of us. Okay? A noble man walking with God, operating according to God's word, he's rewarded with a noble woman. You're a guy? You know what? You looking for a wife one day? A noble man God honors. Okay? Noble man God honors. Be the type person you want. Because what was he? He was a noble guy. And what did the Bible say about her? She's a noble woman. A woman of integrity. Okay? Woman of integrity. So if you're looking for a spouse, do it God's way. Okay? And by the way, if all you're doing is looking for a spouse, you got problems. Because you ought to be walking with the Lord, and when it's time, the Lord will bring the one right into view. I even told Hershey that one time. You just walking with the Lord, and all of a sudden one day you look over and it's like, hey, where'd she come from? God will put all that stuff together. Okay? He did here. Okay? You and I, we're not going to get into the DNA and the line of Christ, but we got adopted into the family based on what? Solely on the Redeemer. We didn't earn it, but we got adopted into the family. Ruth, she got adopted into the family in more ways than one. Heck, she gets to be the great-grandmother of King David. And ends up in the line of Christ. Okay? All right, thanks.